let's just get this straight. Drawing birds is actually pretty difficult when it really comes down to drawing those feathers. So we're just gonna do the best that we can when it comes to this tutorial here. But starting out, of course, I always like to tend to draw left to right because I'm right-handed. That prevents smudging. And as you can see, I started with the beak first and then went with the eyes. Now the eyes are very basic. It's black, kind of round, has a little bit of an almond shape to it. But you always want to leave room for the highlight as much as possible. I will always say that in every single video. Leave room for the highlights in the eyes. That makes it look more realistic to the original animal. Even if it doesn't have much of a highlight in the picture, having a highlight in the eyes, period, is going to make it look a lot better. Now, working with the coloring, I used a variety of warm tones and cool tones in here. So you can see that I used a lot of browns towards the top and then used a little bit more of some cooler grays and blues just underneath the eye and with the beak there. Now the rest of this body here, you can see I'm using some orange, greens, browns, even just a little bit of some purple tones in there too. Having a nice variety of different colors is very important. Now you can see I'm using this paintbrush. I'm using a mineral spirit oil. It's an odorless kind. What that does is clearly you could tell what it does. It actually helps to saturate the colors that are there, as well as blend everything together so that when you apply more layers, you can actually see more detail, more saturation, and overall just a sharper look. So I highly suggest when you're buying color pencils to also get mineral spirit oil. If you're interested in the materials that I'm using, you can also check out the ebook that I have listed below. It has links directly to the materials that I like to use. And if you're interested in actually learning to draw this whole Carolina wren with the tree bark underneath and the berries, you can go to my website and click on the individual classes and just go ahead and purchase this one. Or you can purchase the membership, which has access to all of my previous classes and more information. So you can check that out on my website. But if you just click the link below, that'll take you directly to it. Now, getting back to the details here, you can see this wing has a lot of texture happening, a lot of pattern, just a lot going on. So what I did was I used darker colors first and then kind of started to use lighter colors. That way you can implement a little bit of some highlights in there. And then I used an electric eraser to create those very bright sections. So the electric eraser is also in the materials list. Now the tail doesn't have a lot of detail, but you still want to kind of implement the same method of kind of drawing more of the basic first couple layers and then start to add the details afterwards, as well as applying some of those cool tones and then using the warm tones. Now that the bird is done, we're going to work on this wood texture. This part can be very daunting, very meticulous, just kind of feels like it's not turning out right. But I promise you, if you just follow along these steps in the online tutorial, it's going to help you kind of understand and grasp what's going on here. So I definitely used a variety of colors, but they're actually similar colors to what I used in the Carolina wren itself. So any portrait that you have, I try to stick with the similar colors. That way it kind of is a little bit more cohesive. So I used a little bit of some gray tones along with some orange, like a burnt sienna color, because this is a piece of wood, so it has a little bit of some gray and some warmer wood colors in there. And then of course I used that mineral spirit oil to blend it together and then add more detail afterwards, such as the black parts, which is more the deeper where the bark is kind of coming up a little bit more, some of those textures. You can also use some green tones to have implement some of that mossy look. Now I also needed to apply some highlights by using the electric eraser because on the wood there is some snow that's fallen onto it, so I wanted to create a sense of white fluffy snow in some of those areas. Now when it comes to the berries, there really isn't much to it. You can add more detail over time. So what I did was just kind of drew a general sense of like what the berry looks like. Make sure that you've got the highlight in the right direction as well, and then creating a little bit more shading below, like lower underneath. That way you can tell this berry is landing and sitting, you know, kind of on the side or on top of the wood there. And then you just continue the same methods. Now with the pine needles here, I used a little bit of some different colors. So I used a lot of like a neon green, then kind of an earthy green, and then even used a little bit of some light, like a pale blue kind of color in the highlighted area. And what that does is it kind of helps to settle some of those bright green tones, so it looks a little bit more natural. Now I know it's kind of a pain in the butt to work around these pine needles, trying to get the darker areas underneath it, but I do promise if you just keep working with it, it's going to turn out really, really good in the long run. I definitely wanted to rush this part, and you can kind of tell that I was rushing some of the details, but I think overall, because I was able to apply enough texture and enough layers, I think it turned out really good. So your most important thing to remember is to just stick with the highlights and the lowlights. Focus on those the most. Look at what direction, where's the lighting coming from, and try to draw in that direction as much as possible. So keeping the shaded areas darker and the lighter areas where the sun is kind of beaming down more, keep that a little bit lighter. And that's going to help you overall instead of focusing on every single detail that is in the portrait. So at this point you may think that it is almost done, but if you just keep going with the details, I promise you it's going to look even more realistic and actually more complete overall. Now, if you are interested in learning to draw your own pet portraits or just animals in general, feel free to check out my whole 8-week program. It is listed in the links below as well. It's at your own pace too, so I just have it at 8 weeks, but you can go longer or shorter depending on how you feel. But it's all pre-recorded, so you don't even have to contact me if you don't need to. But go check it out. I promise you it is very detailed and very helpful if you are wanting to learn to draw animals or pet portraits. But thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe as well. And as you can see here, like I'm using that electric eraser, and it has done me really, really good for getting those highlights in as well as the little snowy bits. So I highly suggest getting those kind of materials along with the color pencils.